Listen, guys, I found this video from Gothix, a conservative content creator. She's also black, and she quit doing the green tango. It looks like. Anyway, I saw this in my feed. Why pride is hurting society. So I'm interested. I'm curious about it. I would like to see why pride is ruining society, hurting society. I'm assuming they're talking about LGBTQ people since they did the whole rainbow. So let's see what we got here. Let's see how it's hurting society.
If pride goes before the fall, then I find it ironic that there's an entire month dedicated to it. If pride is so deadly, then why would anyone want to teach their kids this concept?
What?
Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong to encourage someone by telling them you're proud of them, but pride becomes a problem when it begins to revolve around ourselves. In this context, pride can be everything from bragging about your own accomplishments to always believing you're right or that you're perfect just the way you are. That's a lie. Pride can also take the form of fishing for compliments and recognition or being unable to ask for help when you really need it.
Okay. Sure. There's good pride and bad pride, I guess, is what she's saying. But what does that have to do with like gay people? Why does that have to do with like? Is that? I mean, you had the thumbnail put gay pride rainbow in there, or maybe she's trying to reclaim the rainbow. I don't know. They're ruining society because they keep bringing that Zaza, bro. What the fuck is Zaza, dude? I don't even understand.
I find pride to be the most dangerous characteristic a person can hold because to be prideful means to be void of humility, and it's humility that will bring someone to the point of self-reflection. If someone can't look at themselves in the mirror and reevaluate their own behavior, it stops them from growing as a person, which has severe consequences for society as a whole. For example, if we look at the current state of political and social discourse, you don't have to look very far before finding someone who scoffs at other opinions or writes someone off as a conspiracy theorist. These people have allowed their pride to close themselves off to new information because the feeling of being right is more appealing than the shame.
Zaza is weed? Oh. Thought it was like a cool dance move. Okay, sorry.
They'd feel from being wrong. Just look at the conversation surrounding COVID. Get vaccinated.
What does that have to do with gay people?
Says the prideful, as more and more people continue conversation surrounding COVID.
Okay.
Get vaccinated, says the prideful, as more and more people continue to drop dead.
I don't think that they're prideful. I think it's more like, hey, this has been shown statistically that COVID's a problem because of the excess death rate hitting like 1 million in 3 years. And people are, you should take it. There's some annoying people who get, the I say the biggest biggest what is the word called? Side effect. I say the biggest side effect of COVID was how annoying my mother was when she got the life. Oh, you should get it. You should blah blah blah. I eventually got it because my wife had to for work, and I figured if we're gonna die, we should do it together. Listen. It's not. We were okay. Nothing bad happened. I was nervous. It happened quickly. I was just nervous, dude. I was nervous of it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy I got it now because COVID did, unfortunately, like, my uncle did pass away due to COVID, so it was very unfortunate. So I'm happy that I got it. But I was still like apprehensive. I was still a little afraid. It seemed like it came fast.
After being coerced into taking a drug under the false promise that it would stop transmission.
I don't think anybody said that. There might have been misspeak saying it stops transmission, but most of the speech that was going around was that it will reduce transmission, and if you get it, it's less likely to be as intense. There probably was some misspeech. I think I remember some videos, but ultimately it was more of like a preventative measure to like reduce the negative impact of COVID.
Or what about the presidential election? Vote blue no matter who, the prideful proclaim, as we're teetering on the brink of a global war faced with more homelessness, mental health crisis, and inflation so high that come next year you'll be lucky to not starve to death.
Well, a lot of that was COVID related. It was pretty intense. It killed a lot of people. We had to, and that's with us doing shutdown protocols. So imagine we didn't. You know what I mean? So I can see why that's a problem. And then, of course, Ukraine and Russia are involved in the war. Of course, I support Ukraine because Russia is completely like antithetical to what I believe in. Not really having the same freedoms of speech or the big one or expression. So it's unfortunate we have to support that. It is contributing to inflation through energy costs, but sometimes you just have to do what you got to do. And
it's this level of arrogance that inevitably leads to destruction. Take the case of the LGB and the T's, for example.
LGB and the T's. Interesting. Okay.
They form a month-long celebration around someone's sexuality and mental illness and
Jesus Christ. I was not fucking expecting of that. Jesus Christ. And mental illness. That's a claim. I guess I would consider gender dysphoria like a mental illness or disorder, but I say it in a way of like trying to get people to get the help that they need to be happy and functioning in society. And it feels like she might just be using it as a way to invalidate trans people. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And I think that the month-long celebration is more about celebrating the fact that historically gay people have been shamed out of like heavily and some killed. It's a big celebration of like the Stonewall riots, you know. Yeah, I get the month thing. You know, it's fine for me. I don't like the over sexualization of the pride parades. I think it takes away from the educational aspects of it, of like educating people on like LGBTQ struggles and stuff. So I can agree with that. That's a little crazy. But fundamentally, I'm cool with pride. I think part of the problem is anybody can become a vendor at the pride parades. So you got like fucking PETA, not even kidding, handing out pride packets like, oh, don't kill animals. It's like, well, of course, gay people don't kill animals. They don't hunt. They're fucking losers. I'm just kidding. I don't hunt either. But yeah, I think that's probably a problem. So you have some like wholesome people there, and then you got that motherfucker with assless chaps on, and it kind of takes away from everything, right? Yeah.
Pressuring society into accepting it by changing laws that infringe on the rights of others.
Like what?
This pride disregards.
Wait, what law are we talking? I'm just curious what she means.
Into accepting it by someone's sexuality and mental illness, and pressuring society into accepting it by changing laws that infringe on the rights of others.
Is she referring to like misgendering bills? I don't think that we have that in America. Maybe she's referring to Canada.
This pride disregards the values parents have instilled in their kids by going behind their backs to expose their children to drag queens, gender identity, and sexuality.
I mean, listen, I think it's weird to bring kids to a drag show. I absolutely agree with you on that. But I don't know if they're going behind their backs necessarily. I don't think that's really happening. Maybe I'm wrong. I see like them taking their kids to a drag show, which I think is weird. You know, the problem with drag is drag historically has just been like a bunch of gay dudes dressing like a singer and like, you know, lip syncing and all that stuff. But usually the singers like Whitney Houston and whatnot, or Aretha Franklin, are like, they were bold, respectable women, and music wasn't sexual back then. But now all music is sexual, it feels like, and then a lot of the music is like from that's promoted towards girls is sexual music. You got Zendaya doing fucking twerks and shit, and all, whoever the fuck else. I don't even know names, but you get my point. And so they'll pretend to be one of them, and then they're being sexual. And then we're like, oh my God, that's uncomfortable. Look at this drag person being sexual to like our kid. But like the reality is like, what about the music that they're already listening to without the drag person? Why don't we have a problem with that? It kind of seems like it kind of makes me question some of the motivation for the situation. Maybe some of the motivation is warranted. I can understand like the uncomfortableness and whatnot. Maybe some of the motivation is a little bit homophobic potentially. You know, I think it's a mixture between things. I'm just saying maybe we should start talking about the over sexualization in music that's primarily consumed by girls. Like, I mean, there's a lot of sexualization in cheerleading, and sometimes not necessarily, but there's like for some cheerleading with these kids wear like short skirts and they learn to pump out their chest and beauty pageants and stuff. And it's like maybe it's time to talk about some of that, you know, because it seems like we ignore that part for the most part, and we kind of like go crazy over this. And I feel like why not try to keep why don't we keep it proportional to each other, you know?
And then when these,
like, it seems like we're more worried about young boys dressing up like girls because it's drag and sexualizing themselves, but we don't really necessarily care if the young girl does it, I guess. Okay, shout out to Hooters. Nice boost.
Kids have been primed enough to fixate on themselves, which is at the heart of pride. They're hurt men to expose their children to drag queens, gender identity, and sexuality. And then when these kids have been primed enough to fixate on themselves, which is at the heart of pride, they're herded like cattle into gender clinics, and bam, you've got a future voter for the left.
Well, I don't think that they're herded like cattle to clinics.
They're herded like cattle into gender clinics, and bam, you've got a future.
Like, listen, this is a fucking claim. I'm apprehensive about kids transitioning because there is a heavy social influence, and I think that there might be some kids who are misdiagnosing themselves with some kind of gender issue. because part of them are transgender, and maybe part of them are misdiagnosing themselves. But it's easy to educate yourself on like what to potentially lie about and go to the thing. That's why we need really well trained doctors. That's what I'm apprehensive about. Because I it's a big change, man. To have a kid go through that's a whole fucking other topic for another day. But I don't think that they're hurting them like cattle. I think that's a little disproportionate. Okay.
Your voter for the left, a permanent
we're making trans voters, baby. Boom.
Customer for Big Pharma, and a spiritually broken child.
If you're criticizing Big Pharma, I would recommend that we get rid of it, right? So like if you're like they're just trying to fucking go Big Pharma, maybe we should implement some kind of universal healthcare system, maybe not quite Medicare for all, but maybe like something that maintains a private and public option to reduce the ability and incentive for these companies to these pharmaceutical companies to take advantage of people. Now, I don't think that there's this big conspiracy to make kids trans to push more pills onto them. We could just make them depressed, which is already happening, and I think social media has a lot to do with that. But wouldn't it make sense? Because like you're admitting that there's a big issue with capitalism in some areas. I'm a capitalist. I'm not saying we should get rid of it. I'm just saying like maybe this is a problem. If this is where like why do you advocate for some kind of a universal healthcare or advocate for some kind of a solution to this, or do you only talk about it when it comes to promoting a conspiracy about LGBTQ people? I'm just saying, I think it's something to think about and reflect on.
That we can only hope doesn't take their own life once they realize they've made a huge mistake. Is society becoming more intolerant? Or are people sick of being forced to accept something they don't? A prideful person will be the first to proclaim that the world is full.
Maybe that person that's not being accepting is being too prideful of their own perspective, huh? Think about next level bargain bin brain.
Of transphobes, bigots, homophobes, but a person with humility will be able to recognize cause and effect. They'll be able to see just how much they've contributed to the mess that they're complaining about. But pride isn't just reserved for the gays or the gender confused, although many wear it as a badge of honor. But pride can be found throughout society, everywhere, from the celebrities who are eternally starved for recognition for the
It sounded like this was okay.
most superficial aspects of their career, to the lengths the morbidly obese will go to redefine healthy and beautiful in their own image.
Listen, man, I've been on a kick talking about like body positivity lately, and what I like to think is the right way. There are definitely people who talk about it in the wrong way, but like they do. There's some people who talk about it as if it's the ideal goal. For me, it's more about like representation of some people that of like bodies that are probably a little more realistic, especially in our society. A conversation about how you should learn to love yourself as a fat person, so that like you'll love yourself enough to stop engaging in behaviors that are hurting you. Making like solid long-term choices, like not focusing on losing weight, but focusing on getting healthy. You will lose weight, obviously, but the getting healthy part, to me, it's about like if you just focus on losing weight, you crash diet. That's not sustainable. But if you focus on getting healthy and making healthy choices, like going for a walk or eating broccoli, or like having like a fibrous, dense vegetable with every meal, and drinking water and whatnot, I feel like you'll lose the weight, of course, but you're focusing on like a long-term sustainable thing, right? Yeah, I understand how some people go crazy with it, though. I do get that.
And let's not forget about the good old politics and the pride that comes with villainizing one side of the political aisle, knowing that there is a big possibility the person they're voting in could be more divisive, more perverse, and...
Well, you are doing that thing by promoting the LGBTQ narrative here. So... right, you're kind of doing that. You're kind of demonizing the left by saying that they're engaging in a conspiracy to make kids trans so they have an internal voter. You're kind of engaging in that here.
More conniving than the guy they just got out. Humility says, I think I've made a mistake. But pride says, at least it's not the other guy. Humility says, I shouldn't have blindly supported Black Lives Matter. But pride says, it's not about the money, it's about the message.
I think both of those can be true. I think that you could say like, hey, I like the fundamentals of Black Lives Matter, trying to advocate for Black people. By the same time, the organization seems to have gone a bit fucked. And it seems like, and I'm not super educated on it, but it does kind of seem like, because I've seen the stuff about like the millions of dollars they've used to buy house and whatever the fuck, or mansion or whatever it was. And forgive me if I'm a little ignorant, but it does seem like there may have been people who weaponized what I think is an important movement by doing that. So
humility says men and women are different, but pride says
humility doesn't say that. Like logic says men and women are different.
It's transphobic to acknowledge the rise in sexual assault in gendered spaces.
What? Very confused what that means.
Humility says we're
What do you mean? I just don't understand.
Humility says men and women are different.
Right. Logic says that. We know that men and women are different, sure.
But pride says it's transphobic to acknowledge the rise in sexual assault in gendered spaces.
Are you saying that there's a rise of sexual assault in gendered spaces because of we're allowing trans people in there? I feel like you could never promote a statistic that would actually even come close to prove that idea. Here's one of the problems I have with this like concept of like, oh, because I get it. First of all, I get it because like I'm not a woman, but like, you know, if you're a non-passable trans woman and like I understand you may want to, you're going to want to be seen as valid. At the same time, that can make it very uncomfortable for like cisgender women, especially if you look more like a man. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but so I get that, and I get the conversation about like what it means to allow trans people into some spaces. Because if you're not super passable, I get like I can understand that it's a confliction of like a trans issue with like a woman's issue, a cisgender woman's issue specifically. I get that, you know, especially if you're a trans guy and or a trans woman and you grew up as a man and you're not going to understand. Like, I would say if you split everybody in two different categories of like your developmental years and the rest of your years, you know, you as a trans woman, you may not have that first half of like life that growing. You don't understand what it's like to be a girl growing up, you know. So there's a lot of nuance here. So I get that. At the same time, though, some parts of it are frustrating that there are some people that are like super they're like, oh, well, we shouldn't let trans women in the bathroom because then a cis man might go in there pretending to be a woman and rape a kid. But how come it feels like, how come you're not worried about little boys getting raped in the boys' room by these same predators? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like another instance of using your advocacy for one issue to break somebody down instead of build somebody up. Instead of trying to build up sexual assault survivors, we're trying to break down trans people, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? But it doesn't seem like we necessarily care. You know? You know what I'm saying?
Humility says we're starving and poor, but pride says that's not real socialism. Pride is a disease that would rather watch the world burn than admit they're wrong. But you know who else is prideful? The people who say, I told you so. The people who, while totally justified in their frustration, would rather boast about how much more humble they are than offer someone grace and forgiveness. Okay. Because it's pride that believes arrogance complements arrogance. But it's humility that says, we've all got things to work on. So now you might be asking, what's the point? How do we break?
That's a good question. I'm a little confused.
Through someone's pride when they're fixated on how great they are.
Okay.
Truthfully, I wouldn't worry about them. As I said, disgrace and destruction are inevitable consequences of pride, and sooner or later, they'll have to face themselves, either in this life or the next. But I think the most important takeaway my viewers should get from this video is that we all have been prideful at one point or another, and it's not exclusive to sexuality.
I take a lot of pride in the fact that I'm a man. I mean that a lot, actually. But I think that's good pride, right? I don't put other people down with that rhetoric. I'm not like, I'm a man. If you're not held to this standard, if you're a man and you don't identify with that, you're less than. I don't think that. But I take pride in being like a man, trying to be strong and trying to be like a family oriented guy. You know? No. Okay.
Race or political affiliation. One of the most prideful positions a person can have is the belief that there isn't anything left to improve in their own lives. So what I'm going to do is to end this video off with some tips to help you recognize and address even the most subtle instances of pride, because improving ourselves is how we'll ultimately improve the world. First and foremost, we have to acknowledge that we as humans are all on the same level, and we should never aim to be better or higher than anyone else, because this will ultimately affect how you treat others, and you'll start to see them as a potential threat. So stop.
That was horrible advice. That had to have been some of the worst advice of this video, right? Like, I have to re-listen to that because make sure I understood what she was saying.
Is how we'll ultimately improve the world. In the most subtle foremost, we have to acknowledge that we as humans are all on the same level, and we should never aim to be better or higher than anyone else, because this will ultimately affect how you treat others, and you'll start to see them as a potential threat. So
that's horrible advice. So I think that you should all think highly of yourselves and have the personal mentality and perspective that you're better than everybody without actually thinking you're better than everybody. Or rather, I think that you should all have the perspective that you can be better than you are right now, and you should strive for the most. Understand that you're better than yourself and do better for yourself, but never treat other people like they're less than you. That's what I think that you should engage in. It's not humility to intentionally hold yourself back from success so other people don't feel bad. Surpass people. Do the best that you can, but never treat anybody as less than yourself. Even if there's somebody that isn't as motivated. Because the reality is if you adhere to the mental or the perspective, if you adhere to the perspective that you can be better than yourself and you always can, and you're always striving in a positive way that's not hurting your mental health by making you feel like you're inadequate, then you don't need to prove anything to them. This was terrible advice. It's sad. Listen, I'm really not trying to be rude because I've seen some of her content and I don't dislike it. She's interesting. But I feel like this video was kind of rambling, and at this point, this feels like we've really come full circle on the absolute ramble. Like that, I could never imagine somebody that, I can't imagine ever, I couldn't imagine that perspective. I don't know how you said that. Okay.
Stop comparing yourselves to other people. Next,
okay.
While healthy competition is okay in regards to sporting, it's still good to practice sportsmanship and recognize someone else's strengths. I do this every time I play video games, and I might get my ass whooped after a game of Overwatch, but I'll still tell the other team, hey, good game, or that was a good play.
I say, fuck you. Fuck yourself, you piece of shit, you're cheating. I'm just kidding, I don't say that. I actually do say GG lately when I play games, if I play a competitive game, but I don't usually. How old is this woman? Because she's acting like a fucking 40-year-old mom. With some, I'm not trying to be rude. Interesting. Some of the stuff is just weird. I don't understand. Video game stuff. It sounds like she's trying to talk to her kid in like a relatable way. I don't know. It sounds like she doesn't really give us her information. She seems young though. She seems like my age. Oh, I guess I'm old, so. Okay, let's continue, I guess.
This leads me to my next point. Sometimes I'll lose.
Yeah, you want to do duos in Overwatch, Gothix? What's your rank?
A match because, well, my team is. This leads me to my next point. Okay. Sometimes I'll lose a match because, well, my team isn't the greatest, or maybe I'm not the greatest. I don't know. Instead of yelling at them, I choose to encourage them, and if I can, try to help them out. Be willing to extend a hand to those who are weaker than you. I wish.
Okay. It's just weird with the Overwatch shit because, like, when you're losing. Here's my advice when you're playing Overwatch. Try not to blame other people or flame them because they're just going to play like shit. And a lot of times I do it intentionally just out of like a pride moment. You know, all you can do is control yourself when you're playing a game. Do your best to control yourself. That's all you got to do. If your team sucks, try to play around it. Try to be better. Blame yourself as much as you can in a constructive way because you can only control yourself. There's some real Overwatch advice. This is the worst fucking Overwatch advice I'm getting. What is this? What is this shit?
People can help me with that when I suck at games. I don't know if I'm going to keep that.
Yeah,
my next tip is to become more comfortable admitting your mistakes and learn to apologize when you've done wrong. There is no honor in being stubborn and arrogant, but wisdom follows those who are open to correction. And lastly, don't boast about your achievements. Stop telling everyone how good you are at something. It's tacky, and your efforts to impress someone could just end up annoying them. Let other people...
Okay. Yeah, here's my thing. I think it's good to acknowledge your achievements. And it's not necessarily bad to tell people of your achievements, but you don't need to do it in a way that comes off as like really pompous or aggressive or random, right? Like if you're in a conversation with somebody and you're just having regular talk and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I won a trophy today. It's like, okay, relax. You know, that's not, you need to relax on that. But here are some of our analogies. You think conflict or a message? Maybe, yeah.
Compliment you, but make sure you don't allow those compliments to go to your head. But that's all I wanted to say about this topic, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more content like this. And be sure to follow me on Rumble. My name is Gothix, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
I guess she pushes her Rumble now. Should I make the switch? Never.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.